Today we are privileged to have guest speaker, Mr. Shabir Abji, Executive Director of 4 Points Sheraton. Welcome, Shabir.
Thank you very much, Shazin.
Shabir will be talking to us about the impacts of COVID-19 on the Tanzanian economy, the hospitality industry, and businesses at large. The outbreak of COVID-19 has had an extraordinary impact on the global economy. Some estimates suggest that it will trim economic growth by 2% per month if current conditions persist. This has already started to affect the Tanzanian economy. Shabir is also involved in the IT sector, manufacturing of chemicals. He's a board of directors of several companies, including Jubilee Insurance, and part of the governing council of the Confederation of Tanzanian Industries. Shabir, if we can start by asking you if you can give us a brief picture of your businesses, how coronavirus has affected you, and what measures you've taken to reduce risks and continue and sustain business operations.
Shazin, thank you very much, and thank you, the Economic Planning Board, for inviting me to be a part of this webinar. Let me first just clarify that these are my own personal views and thoughts, and therefore I'm accountable for them, let's put it this way. COVID-19, what a disaster for the world. Like you said, 2% GDP has already been cut from the world's resources if we look at it from the economy. And as there is more and more lockdowns that are still happening around the world, there is huge impact on the financial standing of countries, of companies, of individuals. And this is not just a viral pandemic, it's actually an economic pandemic, like everybody else is saying. So to try and answer your question, because there is no real one answer to everything, and what we have done in our sector, and I'm primarily talking about the hospitality sector at the moment, because I will address the other sectors as we go along. But the hospitality sector is as you've seen, Shazin, all the hotels are closed. There are a few hotels that are still operating, trying to be creative in their marketing, to be able to say, come live with us for a month, we will give discounted rates, be away from the family, elders, so that you don't have the, the chance of being able to be infected if there is a problem in the house or whatever. I think these are good things. We all need to stay alive at the moment. We have been closed now for 2 months, exactly 2 months. And we're looking at it and saying, when will we really open, right? What do we need to do to be able to get open? Because now that we have, Tanzania has declared itself to say we are open, that there will not be any quarantine for visitors coming into the country. There will be slight checks and whatever, which is quite mandatory. But we don't have any airlines coming in at the moment. We only have 2 airlines operating, and we are hoping that once the full gamut of what airlines used to come to Tanzania, once they start, we will see some traction within the hotel industry. But keeping property closed for 2 months is not a joke, because the expense that we have to go through, making sure that each and every room first is cleaned, sanitized, we fumigated. There's a lot of exercise that you have to do, and so you have to have a skeleton staff that is working throughout, making sure maintenance is done, because as and when things are just left, there's always going to be some issues that will relate to that. So it's a tough time for the hospitality industry, and especially if I can touch on the fact that when I talk about hospitality, I also talk about tourism. From what my research shows me, that tourism accounts for roughly 17.5% of the GDP of this country, which is huge, right? I think it's second only to agriculture, if I'm not mistaken, right? And 17.5% on mainland Tanzania and over 35% in Zanzibar, right? And Zanzibar is totally closed. All the hotels are closed. So imagine the amount of workers who, where did they go? What do we do with them? Our main concern as hoteliers, I think, is our people. We have invested heavily in training our people to do their jobs in the correct manner. And in the first 2 months, we have asked them to go on leave, half pay, right? And starting this month, to be honest, we have no choice but to tell them that they are on leave without pay. And there are some who will say, that's not what we want, and so we will have to now sit down with them and come to an agreement as to how they exit, which is very sad. It's very sad to see. I look at my employees as my own family, and it really hurts to see that these are the people who are relying on us for their bread and butter, not only for themselves, for their families. So if I have 200 employees, really 1,000 people are affected in the whole scenario. And therefore, it grieves me to see this. But it's an unfortunate situation. Hopefully, in the next couple of months, we will start looking at reopening because the flights, once they start in July, and we have been given hope by the airlines that there are flights starting to come in. All the major flights that were coming in will start coming in. And people, once they start traveling, now there is another question there. In the last 2-3 months of Corona, I think we have all learned that working from home is a great option, right? Shazin, it's so difficult when you talk about labor, right? Your employees who are really part of your family at the end of the day, and we treat them as such, and we've invested in them as well. And when you talk about laying off or putting 200 people on leave without pay, that means probably 1,000 people who don't have an income because of their families. And therefore, it really grieves us to see. But what can we do? We really don't have a choice. Yeah. Shazin, we belong to a family of international hotels, the Marriott Group. Marriott has roughly 7,000 hotels, of which right now, as I speak, 83% of those 7,000 hotels have been closed worldwide. It's a huge issue as far as the hotel industry is concerned. Obviously, Marriott has their guidelines. We locally have our guidelines that we have to follow in terms of labor law and making sure that not only labor law is something which is mandatory, right? But beyond that, I think we need to be a bit humane as well. Labor law might not be, might give you certain things and might not even give you certain things. There are guidelines, and I think one of the issues that we are having just now, and which is being debated very hotly, not only for our industry, for all the industries, what happens COVID-19 related employment issues. If your business is not doing well, if there is no business, yes, you can lay off people, right? But you may not want to lay off people, right? Just like I would not like to lay off my staff because, again, they're well trained, they know my property. I don't have to now redo everything again. There's a cost implication to that as well as a company. So sometimes labor laws will tell you what you're allowed to do, and this is what we follow very strictly, right? All the guidelines that are given under the Tanzania labor laws are followed very, very strictly.
Post-corona, how do you see the hospitality sector? What changes will follow after this pandemic? And in particular, what changes are you going to implement in your hotel? Being part of the Marriott Group, Marriott are taking stringent worldwide hygiene safety protocols, limiting human interaction in check-in and check-out between staff and guests. Complete overhaul of the spas, the gyms, and the F&B industries. How are these costs going to affect your business?
I think it's a very valid question, and I smile because, I don't know. I look at the Marriott Group and I say, wow, they have their safety, fire, life safety standards, FLS standards, what we call about, are probably the highest in the world. And you have to follow them to the letter. They have inspectors who will come in and stay in your hotel just as a guest, and you wouldn't even know it.
Mysterious guests.
You're being audited, right? And at the end of the audit, the guy will come up to you and say, I'm Mr. So-and-so, I was auditing your hotel, and this is what I give you as a out of 100 marks, this is what I give you. But over and above that, what they had already instituted, which was very interesting, is a completely, like you said, person-to-person, contactless check-in, check-out system. Today, you can go book in a Marriott hotel online, right? And as you go to the hotel, it will connect to the hotel, and it will give you a guide to where you need to go to your room. You don't have to interact with anyone. So you go, if the lift needs a card, you will use your smartphone, and that will take you up to wherever you want to. You go to your room, and you use your smartphone to actually unlock the door. So it is completely contactless, right? This is one of the things that I see will be something very interesting for the future. But when it comes to the F&B industry especially, we really don't know. Right now, even if I was to open one of the restaurants, we would make sure that there is some social distancing happening between tables, and that all the hygiene protocols are followed, that you wash your hands or sanitize your hands, and we make sure that all the tables are sanitized as and when used. All the crockery, cutlery, everything has to be sanitized, has to go through the heat process systems, which we already have, right? Normally you would have as a hotel. So coming to rooms, I mean, does it mean now that we cannot have 2 rooms side by side? Would that create a problem in terms of social distancing? We don't know yet, right? It's all as we go. This is new for the entire world.
It's a great learning curve. Okay, let me rephrase that. Maybe not a great learning curve, but it is a learning curve.
Look, everything and all the sages have said every day you have to learn something new, right? And so this is another learning, right? And I think it's we just have to be positive about things. So one of the things that I see people doing is becoming very very negative and very how would I say, becoming very negative about the whole issue of COVID-19.
When you go one step backwards, you touched base on the F&B industry. So as we all know, when we go to hotels, our breakfast is normally in a buffet context or format. That will definitely have to change, because from what I've been reading, it's going to be more of a grab and go kind of a breakfast. As you said, we still don't know what the answers are, but a buffet will be a very difficult to maintain social distancing. And what is your what is your opinion on that? And it leads me to my second question. Does that bring in opportunities for people to assist you in doing the catering of the grab and go?
Good question, Shazin. I'll tell two parts to it. One, before we closed down the hotel, we were already practicing that. The buffet was closed, and we used to have an afternoon buffet here every day. That got closed down, so we had a grab and go. Right, you just take something and go. You don't even sit in the restaurant. As far as breakfast is concerned, there are two options. One, you either do a grab and go, take your coffee and bagel or whatever and leave, or you order breakfast in your room, right? Which is a full breakfast. That's whatever you want then would be given to you. But otherwise, we don't see how else you can do it. But let me tell you, the industry in Tanzania is different. When I look at the F&B industry, and I look at since last Monday, everything opening up, and all the restaurants are open. And I must say, I was a visitor to one of them. And I do believe, my personal belief is that COVID is here to stay with us. Just like all the other diseases that we have seen in the world, TB, bilharzia, God knows what else. I mean, these are all diseases that have come and have stayed. And they all kill as well, just like corona is. But corona's percentage of mortality is much less. The fear is obviously because it is highly contagious. That is why the whole this hullabaloo about everything, everybody trying to close down and whatever. You know, a lot of people say post-corona, and I'm saying there is no such thing as post-corona.
But how does a small Ismaili lady making food from home or a small Ismaili restaurant get their visibility, get that marketing tool? What is new ways, especially for a market like Tanzania, what does online presence bring to the table in regard to getting your visibility, getting your face in the market? We do it in a very traditional way that we are come to. How will they be able to survive in an environment like this where social distancing is very important? They generally work out from a very small outlet, even though their turnover can be huge. What is the answer to that?
So as far as the retail sector is concerned, I think there's always been a big question mark, not only here, but worldwide. Amazon today, what was the last, I guess it was 836 billion value, right? For a company that does what? Right? You ask yourself, what does it sell? What does it manufacture? Nothing. Look at Uber. Look at Ola. These are car companies or Taxify or whatever you call it. What do they own? Nothing. It's just an app. They're all only thing that they own an app. They know what you need and they know what the driver needs, right? And he puts you together and makes money out of it.
They're intermediary.
Completely. So why can't we think like that? But when I say think like that, it's not just okay, today I thought about it and I will go about doing it. I think it requires a lot of, I've seen some of our youngsters looking at different ways of creating marketing. And I think they should be encouraged fully well. And we should have, perhaps I should ask the EPB, look at these guys. Let us look at starting, what do you call these, mushrooming companies, right? Incubators, right? Let's start an incubator where we can look at some of these youngsters. And it is today the world is now become a youngster world. Let me tell you, some of us are becoming dinosaurs in the whole thing, and I'm not putting it mildly, because one, we I think are the targets for Corona in a way. And so we, a lot of the oldies would rather kind of sit back and not go out and that kind of thing. So the youngsters, and when I look at a population like here or India, today the population in Tanzania, 68% now of the population of Tanzania is between the age of 14 and 30. So your average population, if it's 68% is there, it's a very, very young population, right? And so if you take the median 14, 30, you're talking about early 20s, everybody being, that is the bulk of it, right? And therefore, I think these are the people that we need to target. We, some of us who are very traditional in the way we do things, right? I run a company, I have my son and say, come join the company and let's create. And I've seen a lot of companies where some of the youngsters have come in and brought in fresh new ideas and given an injection to the which is fantastic. But I think we also need to look at people who have not had that opportunity, right? Who have the ideas. I think we can put together through EPB a group, just like what we have on TV. What are they called? The 5 panelists who sit and Shark Tank or British version.
Just to let you know, we are thinking along those lines in EPB, mentorship programs, but more involved in assisting and holding hands with young entrepreneurs who don't have they have the skill set, but they don't have maybe the experience, and that's why we want to join mentorship programs. You also touched base about hotel alliances. I'm glad to tell you, EPB Tanzania are starting the first hoteliers alliance in Africa. We're just on the verge of forming a company, like you mentioned. Also, in regard to best practice, EPB have formulated a lot of workshops whereby in the near future, we will be helping Jamaati members across all sectors to develop best practice and strive for continuous business development. So great minds think alike. I want to get in.
Fools seldom do that.
We were blessed in Tanzania pre-corona. Tanzania over the last decade has been one of the fastest growing economies in the world. Pre-COVID-19, the Minister of Finance and Planning stated Tanzania had a very strong macroeconomic outlook. His projections for 2020 pre-corona was continuous GDP growth of 7% and controlling inflation from 3 to 4.5%. Obviously, those figures are going to change now. He was also cited in saying that Tanzania and Zanzibar had done a very good job in poverty reduction. It is concerning. A few weeks ago, the Zanzibar government said post-corona, the number of people living below poverty line will increase to a magnitude of double what it presently is now. As we all know, Zanzibar depends heavily on tourism. What do you feel are the short-term, medium-term, long-term impact on the economy following COVID-19? And if you could state a few key sectors which are at the highest risk.
Let me just say that I think, when we talk about GDP figures and whatever, I really don't know whether we ever get the correct figures. A few weeks ago, we were talking about a 2% worldwide shrinkage in GDP, right? Which means huge. It's a huge amount. We look at America and say they came up with a package to be able to stimulate their economy, and suddenly 2-point-something trillion, nearly $3 trillion is pumped into the economy. Where did this money come from? Where was it? Was it sitting in a bank somewhere? Obviously not, right? It's just being printed. What does that mean in the long term, right? I feel that, that amount of money being printed and the value of that money eventually has to have an effect, whether it is now, whether it is in the medium term, or whether it is in the long term. But there is going to be an effect. I don't want to get into the debate of American dollar versus the Chinese yuan or the Indian rupee or whatever, but there are so many schools of thought on that. Let's look at Tanzania. We are currently facing tightness in terms of dollars because a lot of exports have not happened. Lots of, if I look at it, the tourism sector is not bringing in the foreign exchange that we want, right? So there is a tightness. What does the tightness mean? So far, the Bank of Tanzania has been able to withstand that, and we are still within the same levels that we have been over the last 2-3 years. But there is always a possibility that it will suddenly, you might have a issue with the devaluation of the currency, which can be really expected. What the Bank of Tanzania has done is try and also come up with some kind of a stimulus package. If I look at it, it's not money. It is how we can actually have more liquidity in the economy. And what they did is lower the cash reserve requirement of the banks from 7% to 6%. Now, you might find, well, what is 1%? But 1% is a lot of money, right? It is a lot of money, and I think that is now going to slowly permeate within the economy, and hopefully that will create some stimulus. Bank of Tanzania is also asking us as hoteliers to give them an idea as to what is happening within and what are our issues, which we articulated in a letter to the Prime Minister some time ago to say this is what we are asking for. We're not asking for any freebies. All we are saying is that things should be deferred, including, because a lot of people are leveraged, right? A lot of hotels are leveraged. I mean, you don't just have $25-30 million lying in your bank account to be able to suddenly go and build a hotel. So you put in your money and you ask bank to put in their money, and you have projections, and those projections right now are zero. So what happens?
And this, sorry to interrupt you, but this is not only for people who have leveraged themselves of the magnitude of hotels, but even fellow Ismaili people who have borrowed money to do trading or to do other
business activities.
So this is applicable to the whole spectrum of Ismaili businesses.
It's the whole gamut. Shazin, what happens is that let's turn back the clock to 2015, 2016. Property prices were at their peak, right? And when I say at their peak, they were probably a little bit overinflated anyway. So there was supposed to be a correction of some sort that would have come in. You don't expect prices of New York in Dar es Salaam, although I don't see any reason why it shouldn't be, but I'm saying it's unrealistic looking at the economies, scale of economies. So let's say you had a property worth $1 million, right? And you went to the bank to borrow, right? So that you wanted to do whatever business you wanted to do. So you gave a projection to the banks, and the bank said, okay, we are going to give you the limit of the forced sale value of your property, which will probably be 25% under the actual value, okay? So they gave you $750,000. Now go forward from 2016, now you're in 2018, right? And there's nothing COVID related here. Suddenly the property prices have dropped. There are no buyers, everybody's trying to sell, no buyers, because the property price, like I said, there has been basically trying to adjust itself. So the price has gone down by 40%. So your $1 million thing now is worth $600,000. but you have borrowed 750,000. So the bank turns around to you and say, hey, make good that 150,000. Not only 150,000, but now your forced sell value, 75% of 650,000 is going to be very different. So you make up the difference.
About $300,000.
Where do you get that money from suddenly, right? So you tell the bank, okay, we are going to restructure, do whatever, take longer time to pay, get a moratorium, whatever it is. Now COVID hits you. So what happens? This is an effect. What I'm trying to paint a picture is that this is not only in this sector. It boils down to now to the banking sector, which is our strongest sector, which is what runs the finance of this country. And now the banks are faced of taking a decision. Shabir borrowed $1 million from me, $750,000 from me for $1 million property, which today is worth $500,000, right? He's not been able to give me even the gap of $350,000 that I need to keep him alive, but he's not paying me anything. Come 90 days, the rules come into effect. Bank of Tanzania rules come into effect. To say 90 days, you will now provision this in your books as a bank. So that's a loss. It goes against your bottom line, right? So it hurts the banks. So what do they have to do? They have to try and get as much out of it as possible. So what will they do? Go and sell those properties? Who are the buyers? Right? Who are the buyers? I don't think there are. If there are a handful of buyers out there, I'll be very surprised.
It's a vicious cycle.
It's a very, very difficult cycle. And we are all caught into this. So the Bank of Tanzania came up with an incentive program of some sort, stimulus of some sort, to say that try and give moratoriums, right? Longer loan restructuring periods, right? And we are also right now battling with some of the banks to say, lower your interest rate. Otherwise, it's not possible to pay, right? So we even wrote, when we wrote to the Prime Minister, we asked him to give us this kind of leeway so that we could be able to, it's not like we don't want to pay. I don't think any businessman who took that money had the intention of saying, I'll take the money and swallow it. It won't. That never works anyway. So we are in a very precarious situation as far as the economy itself is concerned. When we talk about GDP, recently I heard that we are still in line for a 7.2% GDP. My instinct tells me not possible. It's not possible. It's all the sectors. It is only now that we are seeing, for example, what has happened with Barrick Gold. Now those containers have left this country, right, to go out for assaying and whatever, and money will start flowing back in as far as the mining sector is concerned. And Barrick gave $100 million, right, which goes a long way. So slowly, there are certain sectors which will open up. Our biggest thing in Tanzania was that gas. Look at what happened to crude oil prices, right? First time in the history of the world, they were giving away crude oil. Come take it for free, we'll pay you for it, right? Where would you hear something like that? It's amazing. What we have seen over the last 3-4 months has been really unprecedented. I don't like to use the word unprecedented because everybody wants to use the same word. I think we have to coin another phrase of some sort. But it's really, we don't know.
What can be done to improve the supply chain for Jamaati members that are heavily dependent on imported goods? Do you think there'll be shortages of supply from overseas? And what are your thoughts on businesses that are holding extra stock at this time?
My advice to anyone is conserve. And when I say conserve, you have cash, hold on to it. Don't spend it. Or if you're going to spend it, think not twice, thrice, 4 times. Are you doing the right thing? Will it give you a return, right? Cash today is king. It's always been king, but today it's even more of king. If you have goods in your godown, that means cash, as far as I'm concerned. You will be able to easily convert it into money as we go along. When you talk about imports, I think, again, I would stress the point, alliance. A lot of our Jamaati members have the same kind of businesses. Why not have a central place where everything comes in and you distribute it amongst yourselves, right? We have, sometimes we have a mental block. We want to compete against ourselves. Instead of uniting together and holding hands, we are constantly fighting each other. To whose betterment? That is my question. Who is the winner at the end of the day? We're all losers. I mean, if all the hotels decided we will slash prices, what are you doing? At the end of the day, if you're not going to make money, your overheads and operational costs are so high that you want to make sure that you can meet them, because now you're in a rut, yes, right? Instead of thinking differently and saying, okay, let's all come together and say, okay, this should be 50, this should be 60, this should be 70, this should be 80. And we will not deviate from that. You will suddenly see everybody's making money, right?
And not only that, like you said earlier, your purchasing power will be greater with an alliance. So your costs will be less. And having less costs and having a stable revenue, well, I don't know if it'll be stable, but it'll be somewhat stable in the sense of pricing wise, it gives a better picture for the future.
Yeah, I mean, markets are always waver. And I'll give you, when I first opened this hotel in 1997, 126 rooms, and I used to get calls every single day, right? People begging me for a room, right? And my prices were sky high, right? And so we made a fantastic return at that time. Slowly but surely, other hotels came in here, excuse me, and it diluted my market in a way. But steadily, this hotel has always done 75, 78% occupancy through the year. Post 2015, when the government decided that they are not going to use hotels for conferences or stay or whatever, had a major impact, not only on our hotel, but a lot of other hotels. Occupancies went down slowly, and we were averaging 50%, right? And then suddenly, COVID hits us. From 78, 80% down to zero, right? So you can imagine what it does to a business, right? You see it going down, and you're trying to mitigate it by doing all kinds of different things. I mean, I think I pride myself, as far as New Africa Hotel is concerned, or now the 4 Point Sheraton, that we probably have the best catering services, right? We do a lot of catering, and that is a major market for us. Now again, going back to the restaurant industry, why can't we, as an alliance of some sort, do this catering, right? We have invested money, so I would have banquet tables, banquet chairs, I would have crockery, cutlery, you name it. Everything is there, so that if somebody calls me and says, I want dinner for 500 people, I'll tell you, okay, no issues, I'll do it. Because I know, or even if I don't have all of it, I know where to outsource it, right?
It's coming together, which is the most important element I think we're trying to talk about.
This is what I'm saying, and I think I can't stress it more, that I think alliances, partnerships are very, very important. We started this years ago. We had IBN as a group, the Smiley Business Network, which then became Intra-Business Network, something similar to that. And the Tanzanian chapter at that time was probably the strongest, right? And I don't see any reason why we cannot replicate it again, right?
China and Germany has now started to open and get back to some normal levels, with hotels, restaurants, and retail businesses open, as well as public transport. Progress in other countries such as Australia and New Zealand is commendable. Do you think there are learnings from these countries we can follow, and what are they? And how soon do you think we'll come back to normal levels? And what can we do as a Jamaat to help ensure we are ready when these normal levels present themselves?
No, I'm of a very different thought, Shazin. Perhaps I'm too radical about this. There is not going to be a normal level ever again, right? What is normal, what was normal 2 years ago cannot now be normal again, right? Because we have adapted, right? As human beings, we've adapted. I hold meetings on Zoom every second hour. I have a meeting on Zoom, and I'm saying, why the need to travel to a particular location to have a meeting? Unless I have something else to do there, I will not do it. So now, in my mind, I'm saying I used to travel, let's say, to Nairobi for my board meetings. I don't need to go. Why should I go? I have my smartphone, I have my laptop or tablet or whatever, and I can be in that meeting and virtually and still give the same input, or perhaps even better, because I will be better prepared. Sometimes what happens with meetings is that you are reading through while the meeting is going on. This way you have to be ready so that you can answer. So there is a different learning. Look at schools. The distance learning protocols that have been put together, I think some of them are working fantastically well, right? And I would think as we go along, while the issue of social distancing is going to be there for some time, right? How will schools operate? We have an issue in the sense that you have a class of 30, right? Which was in this finite area. And now, will I take the same 30 people back in that class and teach them? Not possible. Not under the present, what we are given as regulations now from the Ministry of Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Education. We opened the Aga Khan School yesterday, just for the NECTA Form 6, because they're going to have their exams starting 25th June. And thankfully for us, I think this is a pilot thing, because we only have a few students. We could separate them in 3 different classes for 3 different subjects, and it's easier for us. But when the whole school gets together, we have an issue. So we are racking our brains, not only here, worldwide, to see what needs to be done. So there will be probably, I think, different timings for different people, right? Different kids will come in maybe in the mornings, some will come in the afternoon. Now that puts a lot of pressure in different ways. One, on teachers. Yes. Secondly, on even administrative staff, right? Because this is now double timing, whatever you're doing. What happens to sports, right? We have opened up sports in this country. We already are open, right? And so shall we do the same thing for our kids? Does that mean, how does that imply against what we are doing for the classroom? So there are lots of questions. There is no simple answer to anything. There is no post-COVID-19. That's my, and I would state this again and again. COVID is not going to go away. Look at it from a simplistic point of view. Why would it go away? Because a vaccine was found, or a cure was found? But a cure doesn't mean that the vaccine is not there. A cure just means that you had TB, so I cured you, but TB is still there, right? If I have a vaccine, right? Will it really work? Because the virus is mutating, right? So will one real vaccine really work? It's a question. Maybe it does. In my mind, it doesn't. Okay. So I'm saying, let's say a vaccine was found and everything is hunky-dory, and if you get a vaccine, you'll never get corona again. When do you think you will get vaccinated? There's 7.2 billion people in this world. When will your chance come? Okay. Even if I say, let's be really optimistic about this, that we already have a vaccine which is ready to be produced, and you need to produce 7.2 billion of them, right? How long does it take to produce? Who are the people who will get it first, right? And when will our chance happen? In the best, most optimistic scenario, 2 years. In these 2 years, what do? We live the way we do, social distancing, making sure that you sanitize yourself, making sure that you don't go to places where there could be suspect, live in fear. I don't know. It's a big question. I don't have an answer for it. I will know what I will do, because I firmly believe that all of us will get corona one way or the other, right? And I think we should be prepared for that. Let us not be afraid. The fear that I see among people is what drives your immunity down. And this is a scientific fact. So my appeal to the Jamaat is, don't fear it, right? Yes, some people might succumb to it, right? Because you might have secondary issues. People like us who have diabetes are more prone, right? Our age group is more prone, right? So we have to be a little bit more careful. But by being careful, again, it's all about viral load. When I say viral load, basically, if I had COVID right now and I sneezed, right? And we are not at a 2-meter distance, let's say, and you can get the virus. It depends how much of the virus you are actually ingesting. If it's just a little bit, you might be lucky and say, I got a mild cold or whatever, and it finished, and you have started producing antibodies for it. What is a vaccine? A vaccine is a mild form of the virus itself, which is injected in you so that your body actually starts making antibodies. That is what's the vaccine, right? So in any event, even if you are vaccinated, you'll still get corona, if I look at it from that point of view, right? So anyway, I could go on for this forever.
Last question. What opportunities present, and I know you don't like to use the word post-COVID-19, do you see for the Jamaat in various sectors?
I think, Shazin, I think I've already answered your question in a way. I think it's a world which requires a lot of technology, right? Technology will rule this world, and it's already doing that. I mean, AI today, if I look at it, blockchain, all these things are used on a daily basis. People don't even understand, if I told a truck driver, blockchain, he will think when I'm taking out the engine, the block and chain that I'm using, this blockchain, right? Because nobody understands it. You have to be within that jargon to be able to understand what blockchain means. Blockchain is just simply being more transparent, right? Being able to understand each and every way what is happening to a certain transaction or whatever it is, right? And we talk about AI.
Artificial intelligence.
Now, artificial intelligence, what is artificial intelligence, right? In the past, artificial intelligence was making of robots, and that was artificial intelligence, right? Microbots or whatever, that's also artificial intelligence. But AI in its own way is just taking massive amounts of data that we have, right, and making sense out of it. To say, how many Shazin alikes are there in this world? Now, if you had the world's data in a room, AI would be able to do that for you. Not only that, it would then, over and above that, prompt you and give you more and more information, right? That is what it is all about, because it won't do your thinking for you, but it will be more analytical, right? So I look at it more like analytical intelligence than anything else.
Thank you, Shabir. So to recap and conclude, the key takeaways for the Jamaat are as follows. 1. Be prudent in decision making. 2. Do not take unnecessary, uncalculated risks. 3. Minimize and reduce costs without affecting operations. Number 4. Best practice, adaptability, and continuous learning are very important as we move into the digital world. Thank you, Shabir, for taking the time to speak with us, share your wealth of experience and business acumen as we all face a challenging journey during these times. We wish you all the best in your businesses, and we hope you enjoyed the session.
Thank you very much, Shazin, and good luck to the APB.
Thank you.